Hello and welcome. It's time for French Politics here on France 24. I'm Mark Perlman.
And I'm Molly Hall. Here's what's coming up in today's show. NATO, the G7, and Russia. Emmanuel Macron makes his debut on the international scene.
With less than 2 weeks to go before key parliamentary elections, the president is poised to win a clear majority.
Plus, Macron promises to clean up French politics, but there are the first signs of scandal from within his own camp.
Last week, President Emmanuel Macron made his entrance on the international stage. As the youngest serving head of state, he went out of his way to make a strong impression and seduce his peers.
Yes, that's right, Mark. First up was the NATO summit in Brussels. Macron met with U.S. President Donald Trump for the first time. That resulted in the now infamous white-knuckle handshake. Macron has called that prolonged gesture a moment of truth, meant to show that he's no pushover.
We raised all the important issues with President Trump in a long conversation that was extremely direct and straightforward. There are topics on which we disagree, where we've made different choices, but we were able to discuss these in a very direct way, including our determination to reinforce our partnership and cooperation in the fight against terrorism.
Then Emmanuel Macron went to Italy for the G7 summit, and there was this now famous stroll in a garden with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Macron posted this video that you're seeing, tweeting, "The Franco-Canadian friendship has a new face. Justin Trudeau, we have to meet the challenges of our generation." More importantly for Europe, perhaps, his personal chemistry with German Chancellor Angela Merkel seems to be working.
That's why I say with great conviction, I wish my new colleague in France, President Emmanuel Macron, all the best for his country. That the people will have jobs and a future, that the young can believe in Europe and their future again.
So words of encouragement and smiles for President Macron among his EU counterparts, but that was not the case for his first face-to-face with Vladimir Putin. The Russian president came to Versailles for what the French leader called extremely frank talks.
It was a meeting that will likely define Franco-Russian relations for years to come, with Western suspicion at Moscow riding at its highest level since the end of the Cold War. The question was how the new French president intended to handle his Russian counterpart.
We can see how to move forward on finding common ground, and I'll say it simply, we have to do that, because if we don't create the conditions to do that, we will never be able to move forward on the matters we've spoken about.
Matters that included everything ranging from Syria to Russia's involvement in Ukraine and gay rights in Chechnya. And while Moscow's alleged interference in both the US and French presidential elections apparently never came up, it's still an issue that's left a fair amount of bitterness in the air.
Russia Today and Sputnik did not behave as press organs and journalists, but behaved as organs of influence and propaganda, lying propaganda, no more, no less.
During France's recent presidential election, Emmanuel Macron banned both Russian media from his campaign, ostensibly an effort to counter what have become known as alternative facts. Vladimir Putin, for his part, seemed unrepentant over his implicit support for Macron's rival in the election, the far-right's Marine Le Pen.
She always publicly took the position of developing relations with our country. It would be strange for our side to turn away from these political activists in Europe who want to develop multi-sided relations with Russia.
It seems both leaders are willing to try and put a backdrop of previous distrust behind them, and the frank nature of their discussion could well prove to be a solid bedrock in finding the common ground on which to move forward.
Well, Emmanuel Macron is certainly hoping that his early positive steps on the international scene will pay off on the domestic front, where campaigning is underway for key parliamentary elections. So, Molly, let's take a look at the latest polls. The president's République En Marche party is poised to win nearly 30% of the votes, ahead of the Conservative, 22%, the far right, 18%, and the far left with over 11%.
That's right, but the figure that counts is the number of MPs. And the projections show Macron's party should obtain an absolute majority. Well, the magic number is 289 MPs, and La République En Marche is slated to get over 300 seats. That's twice as many as the opposition Conservatives and 10 times more than the Socialists. And this means that both mainstream parties would score their worst performance ever.
Yes, Molly, just to give you an idea of the revolution underway in French politics, let's compare this projection with the outgoing National Assembly. And you can see that between them, the Socialists and the Conservatives held 530 out of the 577 seats. So 90% of the seats were in the hands of those mainstream parties, and they'll be essentially wiped out in the coming election.
Well, meanwhile, the political jockeying continues for the National Assembly. We've got the head of the centre-right, Les Républicains, has said that his party will pull its candidates from the second round of June's legislative elections in all races where there's a risk of a far-right candidate being elected.
A decision to block the far-right's path to power at all costs. France's centre-right Républicain party announcing that in all constituencies where they come third or lower in the first round of June's legislative elections, they'll withdraw their candidate.
Gaullists have long fought against the far right and the National Front, so this has been an important matter for some time. And of course, we'll be doing everything at a national level to make sure we don't have to withdraw our candidates. I hope there'll be reciprocity on this. All parties should withdraw their candidates between the two rounds of voting if they aren't in the first or second place after the initial round.
Les Républicains have for years been struggling with how best to tackle elections when there's a real chance of the far right gaining ground. Many advocate the policy of ni or neither nor, whereby the party neither rejects nor endorses rivals while leaving their candidate in place. Others support désistement, or withdrawing their candidate from the race entirely. Defeated far-right presidential hopeful Marine Le Pen isn't pleased.
By adopting this strategy, Mr. Barouin has once again confirmed that Les Républicains aren't mounting a real opposition to Mr. Macron. They're just trying to gain as many seats as possible.
The Conservatives hope the return on their decision will be twofold. If all major parties play ball, the National Front will be kept at bay. And in seats where Les Républicains do well in the first round, support for their party won't be split in the second. And the plan seems to be working. Macron's government has already confirmed that La République En Marche will withdraw their candidates if doing so would mean blocking the election of a far-right MP.
Well, Molly, one of Emmanuel Macron's campaign pledges was to clean up French politics. However, the first signs of scandals are already springing up within his own government. His Minister for European Affairs, Marielle de Sarnez, is under preliminary probe after the far-right National Front accused her of misusing an assistant in the European Parliament. De Sarnez denies any wrongdoing and has said she would file a complaint for libel against the National Front.
That's right. And then there's Minister Richard Ferrand, who's under pressure from the opposition to resign over allegations that he helped his wife obtain a juicy real estate deal.
Satirical French weekly Le Canard enchaîné broke the news. The new Minister for Territorial Cohesion, Richard Ferrand, may well have given preferential treatment to his partner, Sandrine Doussin, in a matter of real estate back when he was the managing director of a Brittany-based mutual fund in 2011. The site was for a care centre in the northeastern town of Brest, though the paper alleges Doussin's property firm had no legal existence at the time and she wasn't the owner of the premises in question. Ferrand found himself on the defensive.
As things have been put, it could create doubt. But again, I wasn't in charge of making the decision. It's been established that the office was the least expensive and the most suitable, so I don't see why I have to justify myself when the board of directors made a good decision, one that it has since made again.
After the Mutuelle de Bretagne bought the premises, Ferrand's partner made over 400,000 euros on the sale, before offering renovations with a price tag of 184,000 euros. It may look like a grey area, but it's not in fact illegal. The government wasn't slow to leap to Ferrand's defence.
It's bad because it creates suspicion in the context of suspicion. I can't stress that enough. It's really hitting Richard Ferrand hard. He's a man of exceptional probity. One thing is certain, nothing illegal went on, and there's no question of immorality.
Given the scandal surrounding former Prime Minister François Fillon allegedly paying family members for fake jobs, any hint of dodgy dealing is a major embarrassment for France's new government, particularly with President Emmanuel Macron set to push for legislation over moralisation in public service.
Well, French prosecutors have for now ruled out opening a probe into the alleged wrongdoing, and this has infuriated the opposition conservatives who claim such a probe was immediately opened against their candidate for the presidency, François Fillon, effectively dooming his chances.
First, let's see the facts. In 6 years, because Mr. Ferrand was the managing director of an insurance company, he was able to get, he or his wife, with only 100 euros, a patrimony of nearly 600,000 euros. If there's no unjust enrichment, if there's no insider trading, if there is not what I believe to be a true scam, then I wonder where is the law?
Well, this brings us to the end of our program. Thanks again for joining us.
Yes, indeed, and we'll see you again next week on The Political Brief.